Let's put ourselves in the shoes of an enemy combatant that may be following the orders or a particular unjust statecraft. How do those folks personally reconcile that with their purpose and their mission? Assuming that we're talking they're shooting at the enemy, not shooting at civilians, but following the orders of an unjust statecraft leader, or maybe a deconstructionist, to put it into the opposing terms.
Let's think about just the context of American wars for the past 25 years. The vast majority of the deployments of American personnel and the fights that they've had have been with people who their organizations are in most cases against international law, against kind of a common good approach to the international space. They are, in a sense, illegitimate combatants. I'm talking about Al-Qaeda, who massacre civilians. I'm talking about the terrorist groups that are closer to Israel, like Hamas and Hezbollah. I'm talking about the Houthis in Yemen. I'm talking about these highly militarized drug cartels in Central and South America that have their own planes and miniature submarines for moving drugs around, and have caused chaos in places like Haiti and Venezuela and others. The list goes on, but in almost every case, what we're talking about is coordinated, cooperative efforts that first attack their own neighbors. This attacks its own neighbors. Al-Qaeda attacks its own neighbors, right? In other words, they're a threat to those closest to them, and then they've expanded their reach of violence and destruction. The people who are part of those, they are perfectly legitimate targets. They're perfectly legitimate combatants for U.S. and Western military forces to take on directly to stop the illegal and the immoral activity.
So just in the news recently was a uncanny video of Venezuelan boat that was said to be part of cartel efforts where a kinetic strike was done recently. How would just statecraft apply to that?
So think about the United States as, first remember, if it comes to humanitarian supplies, if it comes to economic help or any of those things, everyone's begging the U.S. to pay. Right? In the security sphere, people often want the U.S. military to help them at certain times, but not at others. But the reality is that the U.S. should be, as a major power and a major Caribbean and Atlantic and Pacific power, it should be a good neighbor. It should be a force for constructive dialogue for the rule of law. It should be against pirates. It should be against human trafficking, right? It should be against violence, etc. in its neighborhood. And it's not very far from, say, Florida and Puerto Rico down to Venezuela and our neighbor Mexico, etc. And think about all the U.S. citizens and businesses that we have working across the region, making money, helping people have a lifestyle, sending kids to school and things. In the Venezuelan case, you have a regime that last July of 2024, lost the election by over 70% of the vote. And we have the paper ballots and the computer trail to prove it. This is a rogue regime that violates international law, that openly works with criminal cartels, drug cartels, and militias. It has used those types of militias in at least 3 countries abroad to do assassinations, to do drug running, etc. And so the U.S., in a sense, it hasn't sent a military there. It hasn't invaded the country. It's done sanctions. It's done a variety of diplomatic actions. And it has acted at times against, say, drug boats or these types of things out on the seas. And it's perfectly justified if you think about upholding the rule of law in the region.